When I was a little boy, I came to know Jesus Christ at the age of 13 and was just on fire for God. It really was. About every night, and I'll tell you a little bit more why I'm not bragging, because I don't do this now, I need to, but about every night I would pray at least an hour, and about every day after school where everybody else would go play basketball and say, John, come and play, I would say, I got things to do, and I would go up in the top of my little attic in the garage and sweat just unbelievably, but I would pray there again for another 30 minutes. And some of it was legalistically, trying to seek out for God's love, thinking that if I checked the boxes, He would love me more, not realizing that God's love was steadfast, and He would love me no matter what. And but the other part was really, I would say 80% was because I loved the Lord, and just loved Him so much that I just wanted to try to give back to Him if I could, and loved Him so much. And I remember one day I was praying one night actually, and it was really hot in the summer, really cold in the winter. This was one of those summer nights when it was cool outside. And I remember I got down to pray and began to pray, and I just started praying. I said, Lord, I really just want to be a help. H-E-L-P. You know, the Bible talks about helps, along with a lot of other big names we call them, you know, bishops and all these different names. It also says helps. And I thought, Lord, I just really want to be a help to your children. Don't care about my name being in lights anywhere. You know, when I leave here today, my name won't go up anywhere. It'll be still John Inman. And hopefully we'll make a bond and see each other again in heaven if I never see you again. But I just wanted to be a help. There was just a little boy who spoke back to me and said, you know, John, if you want to be a help, you're going to go through things that most men never want to go through. You're going to suffer things that most people never want to suffer. And it was almost like a handshake. It wasn't. But I made a covenant with the Lord that day, and I said, sign me up, almost like the army. So I thought, well, you know, I'll break my leg or something like that, you know, something, you know, peculiar. And all of a sudden, my life began to just turn. An event happened that I'll tell you about in just a second. I was driving down the road with my dad one day, and my dad looks over at me, and he looks at me and he says, son, he says, what have you done to anger God so that you're going through all these trials? And that really kind of hurt me, because I was doing everything I knew to do to love the Lord. And I told him, I said, Dad, I haven't done anything. And the Lord actually, I guess, just gave me wisdom not to disrespect my father at all. But I asked him, I said, Dad, I said, what did Job do? What did he do to deserve the trials that he got? For his children to be taken? For the bulls to come upon his body? What did he do? He served God righteously. And through that, how many people have been blessed by the story of Job? I mean, think about that, over the thousands of years. And so, you know, time went on, but I remember when I was 16 years old, just a young whippersnapper, we call him in Tennessee, young guy, and just running around and serving the Lord. Used to sing with a group called the Valley Boys, and I was on my way, and I met a little girl down in Alabama. Went to pick her up. It was our first date, and was driving back home, headed down Interstate 24, and all of a sudden my tie rod broke on the left front tire. When that did, I lost total. The idler arm was bad. I'd been told that, but the idler arm was bad. It caused my tie rod to break. Lost total control, and just so happened for me, it was on a bridge, and so my truck went this way, hit the bridge head on, broke the back glass. The girl that was with me went out of the back glass, threw her seatbelt, mind you. She made me buckle up, which saved my life. Also broke my back, but saved my life. But she went out of her seatbelt on the road doing 60 miles an hour, and then I flipped over the bridge, and it was a 30-foot drop, if you can imagine. That's a long ways. If you ever see 30 feet, 3 stories is a long drop, especially in a Chevy pickup truck. And I don't remember a whole lot, just saying, oh, God, help me, crying out to my Father. And then I remember feeling these waves, these sonic waves, hit me in the face. I felt a sheet go over my face and feeling these waves, and they sent a helicopter called Life Force to pick me up. And on Life Force, I still remember the words. I can quote them for you, only a few. They said, John, can you hear us? John, speak to us, man. Couldn't say a word. I was totally in the hands of my Creator at that point. If I died, I was in His hands as a sinner or as a saint. Luckily for me, and thank God, I was saved by grace. But I remember I could not speak. I was in a coma. I had lost 6 units of blood. Your average body holds about 8, about that. So I lost 6 units of blood. And they took a girl on life force with me and flew us to Erlanger Hospital, the biggest hospital in Chattanooga. And they called in and said, we have a fatality. I went into cardiac arrest and died. Didn't see a lot. Didn't see Jesus, unfortunately. Didn't get to go to heaven. Had to stay here. But I did hear them say that, or actually the girl there heard them say that. They called it a fatality, lost me. They shot me back. God was with me. They shot me back, brought me in the hospital and said, John, where are you hurting? I said, my back, my head, and my legs. And I had a concussion. I had a whiplash that it was shaped like a banana, as your neck is. It almost turned it completely the opposite way. I had a punctured lung that made it to where I couldn't even talk. I had a busted main artery to my heart was busted. That's where I was losing all the blood. I had a broken pelvis. I had a broken leg in 3 places. Both of my ankles were broken. And one night I woke up and I was in ICU trauma. And they actually came to my parents the first night. Lost so much blood and had so many injuries. They came to my mom and they told her, and I believe in holding hands and praying. We do that in our house. We hold hands and pray. When we're done, we let go. It's not a big deal. It's something we do. But my mother, they came to my mom and dad and they said, Miss Inmans, can you come here? And then she came and they said, we don't believe your son's going to make it through the night. We just want to let you know. And my mother and father, right then and there, in the hospital, first night there was about 180, 200 people there. The second night there was about 300 people there to see me. But my mother and father came, and at that very moment they fell on their knees at that hospital and cried out to God, oh God, save our son. Save our son. And I remember I woke up about a day, 2 days later, and I tried to move my legs and I couldn't move them. And it scared me to death. 16, man, I used to run, climb trees, you name it. I was a basketball player. Loved to run, loved it. And woke up, couldn't move. So I did what every little boy does, as I said earlier, and I called for my mother. And mother came and she knelt down beside my bed and she grabbed my hand and she said, son, she began to cry, which alerted me. And I began to cry and she said, son, she said, the doctors have told us that you'll never walk again. And I didn't know it at the time, but 5 specialists had said he will never walk again. We got opinion after opinion after opinion. One was a family friend of ours who came back and said, actually with tears flowing down his face, said, if God doesn't do something, there is no hope for your son. And so we began to go through that. My mother knelt there and told me that. But she didn't leave it there. And that's what I want to get across to. Be positive. Be really positive people in Christ Jesus. God can do anything that you believe He can do. He can do anything. But God gave faith to my mother who transferred that over to me. My mom looked at me and she told me this, that. But she didn't leave it there. She said, but son, we believe God's going to heal you. And that's all it took. And I, just as a little boy, as if I was standing up here, and my mom said, jump. And you know how you're a little boy, you just jump because you trust Him. That's just what I did. I jumped and I believed her. Never doubted. Not one time. Went over, I was in Erlanger Hospital, and I remember having a 1-pound weight in my hand. I remember Jack, the therapist, he came and got me, and man, I did not want to go lift weights. The last thing I want to do a week after a wreck, a trauma, flipping over a bridge. They gave me a 1-pound weight, and I was looking out the window over Chattanooga, and that's about all I could lift. That was it, 1 pound. And I was lifting and trying to work out. I got over to Siskins Hospital. Actually, when I was in the hospital, my pastor came to see me. He really didn't know what to say, he said. But he said, he told me the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and how they were commanded to kneel down before the king. And if they didn't, they were going to be thrown into the fire. said, O King, we're not careful to answer you, as God is able and will deliver us. But let it be known, if he does not, we will not bow. He told me that story, and I looked over at the wall. When he was done, I turned to him, and I called him brother, and I said, Brother Billy, I said, God's going to heal me. I said, but he knows that if he doesn't, I'm going to love him anyways. And friends, today, let me tell you, that's the secret to any trial. Any trial you go through. If you can truly get to that point to where you say, no matter what happens, it doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to love God. That's it. End of story. Satan lost. Satan lost. So I went over to Siskins Hospital, and they were teaching me how to take a stick and put my pants on it. It's very hard to do. Don't ever advise having to do that. It's very hard. Putting my pants on with a stick and trying to get myself ready and just sliding over on a board just to get in a wheelchair. Putting my turtle shell on, which protected my back. You see what had happened when I read, I hit so hard and smashed so hard that it hit, and the force of it took my spine, this was your spinal columns, pushed it out, and then pulled it over this way. So it took my spinal cord and stretched it, and then almost severed it completely in half. So there was no movement there. It's like a rubber band when you stretch it, except it doesn't go back. Those nerves are severed, and it doesn't come back. And my mother, the doctor told her so, he's never going to walk again. And my mother said, yes, he will. And the doctor said, ma'am, no, you don't understand, he's not going to walk again. And my mother said, yes, he will. And you just got to know my mom. I'm telling you. She's feisty. She should live here, bro. She's feisty. He said, man, no, ma'am, you don't understand. She said, no, you don't understand. God's going to heal my son. And this is what the doctor said. He said, well, ma'am, I tell you what, if he does, I'll jump up and down with you. But it's not going to happen. So there I went over to Siskins, began to do all the treatments, learn how to drive a car with a stick. Just that's all I could have. I used to try to move my toes and then visualize it and try to move them and move them until I would sweat. And nothing would happen. Nothing would happen. And I remember one day my brother-in-law was sitting at the foot of the bed. Actually, let me go back. They told my dad to build a wheelchair ramp. My dad's an engineer by trade. He can do that with blindfolded almost. I told him yesterday with a little duct tape and paint, my dad can do anything. No joke. He loves duct tape. I don't know why. Just love it. But he began to build this wheelchair ramp. And as he began to cut the boards would be the wrong size. He couldn't get the nails to go through. Everything was wrong. And he said he laid the saw down. And he said it just clicked to him. He said, if you build this ramp, you're doubting what I'm about to do for your son. And my dad made a covenant with the Lord that day. He said, Lord, he said, I will carry him the rest of his life. He said, before I build this wheelchair ramp. My dad carried me in the house one time. The rest of the time I walked in. I was at Siskins, and I wrecked on Friday the 13th. I'm not really superstitious. I'm not superstitious at all. Wrecked on Friday the 13th, but it was Halloween day. And they had me standing on some bars, and I was pushed up like this. You ever seen those silver bars, probably? I was holding on to them, and the nurse asked me, said, John, would you like to try to take a few steps today? And I said, yeah, and they had a strap in front of my knees and one behind my hips. And I said, yeah, I'll try to take a few steps. And I walked there, and I walked backwards 5 times that day. I went from that to a walker, which was very loud. I don't know, my parents didn't know about those tennis balls. So I went steak and shake and was just scraping the floor all up. People looking, embarrassing. Went from a walker to a cane. Went from a cane to walking without a cane. And then about, 6 years ago, I bought a Cannondale bike and rode it 33 miles, which is a long way. And the Lord healed me. A lot of people ask, what's wrong with your leg? I have paralysis in my leg. Used to wonder, God, why didn't you? A lot of people say, well, if God does something, he does it all the way. And he did do it all the way. He healed me. I'm walking. He left me this limp. And I thank God for this limp. I thank God for this. I'll tell you why. Because every time somebody says, hey, what's wrong with your leg, buddy? I get to tell them that story I just told you. And it's a witness. It's a witness.
That's right.